As the Mediterranean season drew to a close, the cruise liner Odyssey of the Seas left the Italian coast behind and set out on a long crossing of the Atlantic Ocean. Departing from the port of Civitavecchia, Rome's gateway to the sea, the ship turned west. Ahead lay 14 days at open sea and nearly 7,000 kilometers to the Cape Liberty cruise port in New Jersey. This was no ordinary cruise, but a repositioning voyage, a transfer from Europe to the United States ahead of the winter season of routes to Florida and the Bahamas. None of the passengers boarding in Rome were thinking about storms. The Mediterranean can turn rough in November, but the route felt routine. A liner of this class, one of the largest in the world, seemed unshakable. And with good reason. 169,300 gross tons of steel, state-of-the-art stabilization systems, a crew of experienced seafarers. But the Atlantic in November is an entirely different matter. The first week of the voyage passed without incident. The ship crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and entered the open Atlantic. The weather held mild, the typical autumn sea, modest swells, moderate winds. Passengers spent their days in the ship's entertainment areas, attending shows, sitting in bars and restaurants. Transatlantic repositioning voyages are popular among seasoned travelers precisely because they offer several genuine days at sea with no shoreline in sight, just water, sky, and the sense of being somewhere between two continents. The ship's meteorologists were tracking the developing weather situation. Somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, an area of low pressure was forming. That alone was nothing unusual. Such a pattern is typical for the region in November. But by November 15th to 16th, it became clear that the system was developing more actively than expected. The front was deepening, expanding to cover an ever larger area. Odyssey of the Seas route ran directly through the zone where the storm was set to reach its peak. On November 18, 2024, the liner was in the open Atlantic, en route to the American coast. Less than a day remained before its scheduled arrival in New Jersey. That was when the storm struck in full force. Waves reached 6 to 7 meters in height. Winds picked up to 50 knots, roughly 92 kilometers per hour, a level at which storm warnings are issued on land. Around the ship there was nothing but gray water and a low sky. No port nearby. No way to take shelter. The captain addressed the passengers over the ship's announcement system. He explained that the vessel was facing a powerful storm front, that this required a change of course, and that passengers should secure their belongings in their cabins and be ready for significant rolling. By every passenger account, the captain's voice remained calm. A course change is a standard maneuver in situations where holding a direct heading would expose the ship to dangerous wave impacts. On the navigation tracking service Cruise Mapper, the maneuver was clearly visible. The ship's track suddenly bent, veering away from its original heading. Odyssey of the Seas was searching for a safer path through the storm. Passenger Michael Ducharme put it simply, "We could not avoid this storm. It's too big." What people felt inside the ship was captured by another passenger, David Napoli. The motion is definitely noticeable. I'm not the best judge, but at its worst, the tilt was probably somewhere around 20 to 30 degrees. Imagine walking sideways up a 20-degree slope, and then it swings the other way. That's probably the strongest and most rhythmic rocking I've felt. 20 to 30 degrees of roll on a ship this size is not an abstract figure. Anything left unsecured began to shift. Moving through the corridors was only possible while holding onto handrails. Those who hadn't made it back to their cabins or found a safe spot moved carefully, pressed against the walls. Videos recorded by passengers during the storm show large waves rolling over the windows of the lower decks. Water slams against the glass, foam spreads across the railings and washes back over the side. This wasn't a malfunction or a breach. It was simply an ocean wave covering the deck, exactly as it would in that kind of swell, but it looked dramatic. The greatest material damage was reported at the Crown and Anchor pub, one of the ship's most popular bars and a regular gathering spot for live music fans. During a particularly sharp roll, bottles of alcohol flew off the shelves. Photos taken after the storm show a floor covered in broken glass and spilled drinks, overturned chairs, and damaged bar shelving. No one among the staff or passengers was hurt in the incident. The captain's early warning had given people time to find safe places. Despite the rough conditions, the overall atmosphere on board, according to passenger accounts, remained under control. Most people took the situation calmly, especially those with prior experience at sea. The casino and the Playmakers Bar kept operating in the ship's interior spaces. Passengers unaffected by seasickness spent their time there, playing games, socializing, waiting for the storm to pass. Passenger John Nark summed up the day this way: "Perfect day for eating and sleeping. No complaints from me." But for some guests, the storm proved to be a real test. Seasickness in conditions like these is no small problem, and those who hadn't thought ahead to bring the usual remedies, Bonine or Dramamine tablets, acupressure wristbands, found that out the hard way. The storm lasted several hours, then the front passed and the seas began to calm. Odyssey of the Seas continued on toward the American coast. The liner arrived at Cape Liberty in New Jersey, slightly behind its original schedule, but with no serious consequences for anyone aboard. The damage on board was limited to property, broken stock at the Crown and Anchor pub, and minor damage in a few other areas. The ship's structural integrity was unaffected. After arriving, the liner began its winter season of cruises from New Jersey to Florida and the Bahamas. In the spring of 2025, as planned, Odyssey of the Seas returned to the Mediterranean, sailing from Civitavecchia to Italy, Greece, and Turkey. For Royal Caribbean, the event served as one more confirmation. Modern large cruise liners can withstand serious Atlantic storms without any threat to passenger safety. For the passengers, it became a personal experience they certainly hadn't planned for, but one they'll likely be telling stories about for a long time. Odyssey of the Seas is the second and final Quantum Ultra-class cruise ship in the Royal Caribbean International Fleet. It was built at the Meyer Werft shipyard in Papenburg, Germany. The keel was laid on May 3, 2019, and the ship was delivered to the company on March 31, 2021. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the maiden voyage was delayed by nearly 2 years. Gross tonnage is 169,300 tons. Length is 347 meters. The ship accommodates approximately 4,180 passengers, with a crew of over 1,500 people. On board, guests can enjoy the Ripcord by iFly skydiving simulator, the Flow Rider surf simulator, the multi-purpose Seaplex complex, and the North Star observation capsule. There are also several restaurants, bars, and entertainment venues, including the Crown and Anchor pub and Playmakers. During the winter of 2024 to 2025, the ship was based in Cape Liberty, New Jersey. In summer, it returns to the Mediterranean, with calls to Civitavecchia, the port of Rome, as well as Greece and Turkey.